What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Rams Brothers. I'm your host, Geen, and I'm joined, as always, by my brother and the other great host of this show, Nick. It's officially draft season. We've been slacking a little bit with our coverage, but we've come to you guys today with what we feel like is the perfect Los Angeles Rams mock draft, with just a couple of days ahead of the official NFL draft. But before we jump into all the prospects that we're going to cover and some of the news that has broken over the past couple of days in relation to the Rams, first and most importantly, how are you, my good brother?
Yeah, I want to take on the blame. I just had a kid. I just bought a house. So sorry for all of the delay. Oh, wait, no, that was Dean. So everybody cut him some slack. But yeah, no, I'm good. The LA Kings had a great hockey playoff game last night where they won 6-5. The Dodgers are looking good. Lakers have a game tonight. Good time to be an LA fan.
Yeah, and the Rams have been successful in the draft over the past couple of years. So this is the time where, a lot of the fun can begin as you head into this new season. Obviously, you have Matthew Stafford back. You lost Cooper Kupp, but you have Puka Nacua. You signed Devontae Adams. You signed Poona Ford. So a lot of new fun things that are potentially coming to the table alongside of some of the great prospects that they could add potentially in this draft. And Matthew Stafford was just talking about how he loves how this team has approached it to where you could find these kids come in the building. They're a little bit more mature. They have limited off the field issues. They're 23, 24 years old, and they just want to play ball and they want to go to work. So I feel like that's the kind of prospect that they look to get. And we know what the draft looks like right now in terms of picks. They got a first rounder, two third rounders, a fourth rounder, and 4 sixth rounders. So at some point, I would like to see them either trade out of the first and get into the second round, which we'll do in our mock draft coming up here in a second. And then maybe at some point use one of those 6th rounders to get into the 5th round, and then maybe one of those late 6th rounders to get into the 7th round so that it's a little bit more well-rounded. But we know the Rams are unorthodox. I'm sure they'll do some things that'll surprise us, and that's just the nature of the beast. And I think the first thing that has been pretty surprising to Rams fans, this is from Matt Miller at the NFL Draft Scout. Here's a fun little pre-draft nugget. The LA Rams brought in Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe for a top 30 visit. So it's a little bit unorthodox, but the type of players that the Rams bring in, I think it's the type of player that they're a little bit unsure about. I know they brought in Isaiah Bond from Texas as a big play threat in Steve Sarkisian's system over there in Texas. And I just think they want to be able to evaluate these guys a little bit deeper in the building versus just going to their facilities, going to their colleges and seeing them in their own atmospheres. So this Jalen Milroe player, obviously 4.38, and everybody's saying he's faster than Lamar Jackson. And I put out a tweet yesterday that said if Sean McVay gets his hands on 80% of Lamar Jackson, he could become one of the all-time head coaches in this league. So some news, some bombs that are dropping already.
Yeah, I also think when something like that happens, it's so easy for an outlet to take it and run with it and be like, oh, look who's coming in. It's a top pick prospect. Like the Rams are potentially looking for Stafford's replacement. It's a nice, grabby, juicy headline. But these guys have been working on the draft since they lost the game in Philadelphia. I mean, not exactly, but you give it a couple weeks and their mind is already turning for the next, doing all of this work. So they're running every single scenario and they're bringing in people that they have the smallest inkling of potentially bringing onto the team, just because why not, at this point, run every little, bring in every single scenario possible, just in case the things don't go the way that you want them to go. But like you said earlier, I think I speak for a lot of Rams fans when I like the idea of them trading back, having a more organized draft where you're not trying to grab the key player and you're just trying to fill the holes of the team that were present from last season, and finding them in the draft and doing what you did last year, which is such a great job of finding those holes in the draft, rebuilding the defense and bringing in more edge rushers and stuff like that. So we'll see though. I mean, hey, if Sean McVay does get his hands on a guy like that, yeah, I mean, I'm going to be the first one to be like, it's going to be an amazing situation.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And that's what the NFL draft is supposed to be, because there's so many different projections. You run all these different theories. You have a big board. You do 15 mock drafts. And, you try and land the players that you feel would be best fit to come in and help immediately, or others that you feel like can fill roles when other players move on? I think those two pressing needs, Nick, that you were referring to are probably like cornerback and inside linebacker, when some of the other luxuries that you could look at are tight end, receiver, quarterback, right? So like, the offensive line. So that's kind of how we framed this perfect mock draft. And one other thing that we wanted to talk about real quick was Rob Havenstein. So this is, one of the big things that we focused on within this mock draft. He got both of his shoulders cleaned out this offseason, nothing that required an actual repair. So that's technically a good thing, but he'll be limited in OTAs and expects to be okay for training camp. So that's all good and well. But within this perfect mock draft, it's been revealed. This is what we're doing. So Nick just talked about trading out of the first round. We tapped into the Cleveland Browns, who are always the most confused team on draft day. So we got rid of our 20s. Yeah, we got rid of our 26th pick. We moved back to 33. While we did that, we also got a third round pick, which is 67th overall. So it closes the gap from 33 all the way to 90, which is towards the end of the third round. And all we had to do was get rid of a sixth round pick in 2026. So the Browns GM accepted that, and we were off and running. So Trey Amos was our first pick, round 2, number 33 overall. Then we went Ozzie Trapilo, who's the future Rob Havenstein replacement, in the third round with that 67th pick from Cleveland. Then we went with Chris Paul Jr., a little bit of an undersized linebacker, fits the mold of what the Rams like to bring in, almost looks more like a safety with that 90th overall pick. Kyle Williams, who I feel like is going to be a Tutu Atwell replacement, a Demarcus Robinson replacement at the X, at receiver at 101 in round 3. Then we went Savion Jones in round 4, number 127 overall. R.J. Mickens in the 6th round, of safety, with Quentin Lake and Cam Curl, both in the last year of their deals. Some more depth on the defensive line with Ty Robinson from Nebraska. Tyler Shuck, who fell all the way to the 6th round, who we feel like it's probably not going to happen, but it could with one of these quarterbacks, could drop all the way down. And then we went with an eventual Colby Parkinson / Tyler Higbee replacement in the 6th round in Oronde Gadsden, the 2nd from Syracuse. So that's what it's going to look like. Now we're going to dig into all of these prospects. And we already talked about Trey Amos, famous Amos. This kid, I just feel like we talked about him in the last episode, cornerback 2 floor with a cornerback 1 potential. I think the biggest thing to kind of take a look at with him is he only has 4 career interceptions, but his forced incompletion rate has been really high over the past seasons. It's been 20+% over the past 3 seasons. I think the tackling fit and the effort sometimes varies, but he's got good run fit. I think his awareness is strong, and he's a multi-sport athlete going back to high school. His college journey was kind of all over the place, but it was at Alabama. Then he went to Ole Miss. But I think some of his versatility and the ability to kind of trade back and find that cornerback piece, I think, is going to be most important. Another thing that you could do in this spot is hope that Jahdae Barron just falls back to number 26, or maybe he's available at 33. Maxwell Hairston's another really interesting name. There's Trey Amos's name. Azariah Thomas, we talked about in the last episode. Siobhan Revel Jr. is definitely a name to keep your eyes on. So there's a lot of potential in that first, second round, and I would like to see them address cornerback early. It's also the odds-on favorite position via DraftKings, FanDuel, for the Rams to pick at the top.
That's very interesting. It also feels like, and I don't know if this is more of just like a fluff story to get something out there right now, but because Jalen Ramsey is talking about potentially wanting to leave Miami, I wonder if the Rams are like, let's see how the chips fall. Let's see where we are, when we are, if we want to trade that pick, if we want to bring in top cornerback talent with our pick, or if we want to see if, 30-year-old Jalen Ramsey can come back. I mean, we all know he's been injury prone in Miami. So I don't know if that is exactly where they want to seek, having a Ramsey reunion, especially because they just got rid of Cooper Kupp for the exact same reason, who was another pillar. So it is, I'm sure it's something that they're exploring, because it seems to be with this team, when there's smoke, there's fire. And when these stories come up, there is some weight to them. But I would personally rather bring in a young gun like Amos than
I would. You're right. I would want Miami to eat like 80% of that contract, right? Similar to what the Rams did when they traded him. I think that would be something that's, you're looking at a young corner versus a 31-year-old guy. The Rams try to get rid of players before they're ready to go. I think Jalen Ramsey was probably a good example of that. It's a little bit, I wouldn't say necessarily in a decline, but, you get a little bit older at cornerback, and
Probably
speed
the
is
earliest that they let go in that, like out of all of the tentpole guys that they talked about, they felt like he was the first one. I mean, he was really like the most hired gun of them all anyway. It felt like it.
Yeah, it just had so much versatility in that system. But yeah, again, if you bring on a Jalen Ramsey, you probably don't look at corner at the top of the draft. So there's a lot of variables that come into play. This is probably my favorite pick in the entire draft. I think this is probably the best fit for the Rams amongst all of the players, maybe outside of Kyle Williams and maybe Ty Robinson, that would fit within the Rams' mold. I think after 1 year is the future at right tackle, and his name is Ozzie Trapilo, offensive tackle from Boston College. So he's a 3-year starter at Boston College. He anchored the right spot in Bill O'Brien's offense, which is a pro-style offense. So tons of zone, tons of gap schemes, which is exactly what the Rams like to run. He's an older prospect at 24, which what the Rams really like, that type of prospect, a little bit older, a little bit more mature. When he stayed at Boston College and he was being, I don't know, quote unquote, recruited via the transfer portal, I like the commitment and ability to just stay in place and work as hard as you can. Even if, things aren't going exactly how they should, but they brought in a good coach. Things have, Boston College has been a tough watch, but they've somewhat turned it around. I think being the most consistent player on Boston College's offense, he earned all ACC honors as a junior and as a senior. He's only allowed 2 sacks over his last 2 seasons. He's committed 0 penalties on 772 offensive snaps in 2024. And I think he performed significantly better at right tackle compared to left tackle. Like, I look at some of these other offensive line prospects that are potentially going to go in a similar range. Look at Charles Grant, Anthony Belton. Those guys are both left tackles. They played a ton of left tackle at the collegiate level. And we know, Nick, your comparison to playing left tackle versus right tackle is like switching the position is like playing on mirror mode in Mario Kart.
Yes,
it's a great way to look at it from the grand scheme of like switching over, learning a dance backwards. It's so difficult. Chase Lunt and Cameron Williams are 2 other prospects who played majority right tackle. So I would look more towards that versus guys that have just historically played a ton of left tackle. But I think there's some intangibles with Ozzie Trapilo's game that make him highly desirable at number pick 67.
Yeah, next time I'm on Whitworth's podcast, I'm gonna have to ask him about the Mario Kart mirror mode situation. What's that? Do you even know what that's called? I don't know what it's called. New Heights.
What mirror mode? What do you mean?
No, Whitworth's podcast.
Oh, Fitz and Wit.
Fitz and Wit. Yeah, Dean and I were on that. We were one of the first guests, and I forgot to ask that question. But yeah, go back and watch that episode. But I mean, bringing somebody in on the offensive line that is not penalized, when it felt like last year that was like our biggest bugaboo. It's like we kept shooting ourselves in the foot because we needed a replacement on offensive line, and whoever we bring in is immediately pushing the plays back. And I mean, and Stafford's not getting any younger either. So just to bring in more offensive line talent, bringing somebody like Ozzie, yeah, I mean, that's probably my favorite pick in this mock as well.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Joe Noteboom, you look at KT Levinston, you look at Warren McClendon, like those are all backup players. And whenever in the first 2 games of the season, Alaric Jackson was suspended, and you saw that in the first game of the season, Aiden Hutchinson just taking advantage, all the way going into overtime, and just Matthew Stafford getting beat up. And when Rob Havenstein wasn't on the field this past season, the Rams offense was anemic in all categories. So you need that type of depth. And I think a 24-year-old who's played in a pro-style system, who's familiar with zone and gap schemes, who's a good pass protector, who's mature, is going to be the perfect kind of fit for this offense. And, Rob Havenstein, as I mentioned, is probably on his last year, if we're being honest with ourselves. So,
Ram.
Yep. Hey, Drink, you said it. I didn't say it.
The last St. Louis Ram in the world.
I know. Well, it's been what, 8 years now? 9 years?
Yeah, I mean, it happened. I was still in college. I didn't even graduate until it was 2017. So yeah, like we're going on like 9 years.
Yeah, it's nuts. This next pick, I think, would make a lot of Rams fans very happy. I think they would be like, okay, finally we addressed the position. I was looking at some of the better players that have been drafted in rounds 2 through 5 over the past 10 years, the linebacker position. I look at Bobby Wagner, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw in the range of 2 to 5. Like those are the kind of guys that you want to be able to hit on. Do I feel like Chris Paul Jr. is going to be one of those types of players? Probably not. But he's got really, really good instincts, and he is a green dot wearer, and he's got range to make plays outside of the numbers. He covers a ton of ground. I think some of the tape that I've watched on him where he reads through blocks and stretches laterally to swallow up a run and to stop a play in his tracks is really impressive. He's kind of got like a body archetype of like safety and linebacker as a hybrid. He led Ole Miss in tackles in 2024. He played behind a defensive line that was stacked with future pros, which is, it's a good thing. The Walter Nolans of the world, you want somebody that's been familiar with talent up front so you can play off of talented guys like the Rams have in their system right now. Jared Versus, the Byron Youngs, the Kobe Turners. To be able to work off of those things, I think is really important. So, like I mentioned, a little bit undersized, but that also fits the mold of what the Rams like in the linebacker position. And if you're looking just at some of the other linebackers that you could potentially take in this range, the Demetrius Knight Juniors of the world, South Carolina reminds me of Ernest Jones, Kobe King from Penn State, Samil Mondon Jr. from Georgia, Danny Stoosman and Jeffrey Bassa have both been mentioned a ton. I think even if you get a little bit randy, should I say? Say you're in the second round and you want to go Carson Schwessinger, I would be 100% behind that pick. Kid from UCLA, really talented kid. And, there's Jihad Campbell who's probably going to go in the first round. So linebacker is a difficult position to evaluate. But the Rams like these undersized guys and, guys with good instincts, guys with good motors. Chris Paul fits that mold.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree with that. If you could bring in Carson though from UCLA, I don't know if that's. I mean, they might have to trade up to do something like that, like a quick sneaky trade up, but that would be lights out decision.
He's probably my favorite linebacker prospect of the group, just as a well-rounded linebacker. But
last time Dean said this guy is my favorite from the draft, he ended up having a pick 6 in the Super Bowl.
Cooper DeJean.
Yeah, Cooper DeJean. Yeah. Last year, Dean was all over Cooper DeJean, and then he scores a touchdown in the Super Bowl playing on defense.
And you know what? Texting our family members, I fucking knew that Philly was going to take him. I just knew it.
Honestly, Philly is talk about teams that draft really well. Like they have done such a good job in it's like how you should draft a team, really. Yeah. And they have this quarterback factory now. Like it feels like they got somebody paid for Kenny Pickett, and I feel like they got a compensation for that somehow. I don't know.
I know it's nuts. Yeah, and you know what? They're starting to value positions differently. Like you're starting to value they paid Zach Bond $51 million. You look at Saquon Barkley, just the contract, the extension that they gave him just for winning them the Super Bowl, the percent that they're running the football. They're kind of changing and following the new ways of the NFL, and they're doing it really well, and they just won a Super Bowl that way. So they're drafting to support all of those newness and, a coach that's fiery and a GM that likes to take big swings. And the Rams, I think, are similarly built. So I would expect them to kind of follow some of those molds. The next pick, this is another one that I feel like is an amazing fit for the Rams. There's a couple of guys. I think there's Jake Becht, Isaac Tesla, Kyle Williams. These are all guys that fit within the Rams' organization. And Kyle Williams, wide receiver from Washington State, is a guy we got in the 3rd round, pick 101. So he's from Inglewood. So he's going to be returning home to play at SoFi Stadium. I think once Tutu Atwell is gone after this 1-year deal, and Demarcus Robinson, we know, is in San Francisco, this is your replacement at X. He was a 2-year starter at Washington State. He played primarily X receiver in Ben Arbuckle's air raid offense. So being a steady contributor in that type of offense is really tough to do, especially over 3 seasons. Well, he played 3 seasons at UNLV, and then he broke out at Washington State. But he caught passes from Cam Ward and then John Mateer. He finished 2024 ranked number 4 in the FBS with 14 receiving touchdowns. This is the stat that really stood out to me because we know the Rams want to go off of explosives this year. He's quick to uncover near the line of scrimmage and dangerous on deep balls. He had a 58.3 success rate on throws 20-plus yards in 2024. A lot of ex-receivers need to polish their route running. He is right within that category, but he's got the speed. He's got the versatility, can play inside out, can create deep explosives. I want that. I want Kyle Williams badly.
I think we all want that, and that's why we were all so shocked when they re-upped on Tutu, because that's always what he's been pitched to us as, somebody that can like take off the top, and we just don't really see it. I mean, we saw it more so from Demarcus Robinson last year. I'm thinking back to that overtime Seattle game with that walk-off touchdown. And I think a lot of people are going to say, I don't think we need people. We're like, we shouldn't be focusing on wide receiver in this draft. I disagree, because we lost the greatest wide receiver the Rams possibly have ever seen, at least in the last like 25 years, in Cooper Kupp. And yes, Devontae Adams is coming in. That's going to be great, but there's going to be holes in that offense. And I feel like young wide receiver talent is necessary, especially somebody that can just go to take it off of Devontae and Puka.
Yeah, how about the fact that Devontae's on kind of like a glorified 1-year deal, and Puka Nacua wants to retire when he turns 30 years old.
I don't believe it. I
know. But, those are, I think you just need to be able to fill the depth there. And we know McVay loves receivers. Like, they're either going to take a receiver or a running back or both in this draft. So it's just a matter of.
If they take a running back at 26, I will be the least surprised.
I don't, unless it's Omari and Hampton. I don't foresee a situation where that happens, but you never know.
If it was a better running back draft, I think they would, because I think that, I mean, I know on paper they want to say everything's fine with Kyron, but I also know they say that about everybody, and behind closed doors, they are having different conversations.
Yeah, I mean, they gave Todd Gurley a big extension and cut him a year later. I know it was a lot to do with his knee, but if Kyron doesn't perform and they sign him, they're not afraid to cut bait.
Yeah, we almost didn't have Stafford as our quarterback this year.
Yeah,
like
you're right. Yeah,
don't do anything.
You're totally right. And then there's a couple of other guys too. I just want you guys to keep your eyes on. Emeka Egbuka. I think if he falls out of the first round, I think the Rams are going to try to jump all over that. Jaden Higgins is another one I really like. Look at Jack Beck. I think is a good one out of TCU. Isaiah Bond just had some off the field stuff, so I think he's definitely going to drop into rounds 3 or 4. Elik Eomanor from Stanford, same birthday as Cooper Kupp, same archetype as Robert Woods, great blocker, almost no penalties on run plays in the past year. I don't think he had any. And there's Kyle Williams. So that's kind of the range of the type of players that we're looking for. Kyle Williams in the 3rd round, I think, is a grand slam home run type draft pick. The next draft pick, and we were going back and forth with some mocks previously, and when James Pierce Jr. fell to me in 26th overall, and I traded back, and I still got James Pierce Jr. at 33. I was still pretty excited over the fact that this James Pierce Jr. was probably going to be a top pick at this point last year, but then has kind of fallen off, had some off the field stuff. We talked about him in our last episode, but I still want edge depth. You got to look at a replacement for Michael Hoyt. You don't know what kind of player Brendan Jackson is yet. You got to find a guy that plays in rotation with Byron Young and Jared Verse. And I think Savion Jones, an edge out of LSU, we got him in the 4th round, pick 127, fits that mold. And it scares me, the fact that this whole defensive line is growing together and is, eventually going to have to get all paid at the same time. You want some cost-controlled rookies who can get after the passer. And I think Savion Jones is that type of player. I think he's still – I think he played his best football in his senior year. And he's still, turning into a better run defender. He's a really tough run defender as it is right now. And throughout all NFL scouts, his scouting reports across all major media outlets are that he's really known for his toughness. He lacks some of that elite cornering speed, which is why he's not in the top 3 rounds as a projection. But he's one of the younger seniors in this class. He made a huge leap in his senior year with 43 pressures. He had 38 combined in his previous 3 years, so he's really coming on as a player. So you're getting him at the right trajectory. And these are some of the other guys, too, that you can look at within that range. So you see Savion Jones from LSU in the third, fourth round as a projection. I think Barron Sorrell from Texas. We know Les Snead loves his Texas players. Definitely a guy to keep an eye on. And then Ashton Gillette from Louisville, I think, is another one. And also the Rams met with Olu Oladejo from UCLA, and he's projected to go in rounds 2 through 3. So edge rusher is an important position. You can never look at the Eagles. We talked about them. You can never have enough guys getting after the passer. You saw what it did when you could rush 4 in the Super Bowl, let your linebackers and defensive backs just work in coverage, and you're just dominant when that stuff happens. So
yeah, I didn't even think about. I feel like the Rams may be like hung together a little bit like a deck of cards, like a house of cards. And the fact that we're going to have to pay all of those guys simultaneously at the same time. And then I didn't even know that the Devontae deal it's a 1-year deal.
Well, it's a 2-year deal, but they have an out in the second year. It's similar, I think, to Colby Parkinson's contract.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like they're just like, all right, well, we have like 2 years here before we have to start paying like some like really big important contracts. So
Puka.
Puka.
Yeah,
exactly. So let's try to do what we can right now. We feel like we have a window. It's 2 years. Let's hop on that. And yeah, I mean, bringing in these guys because you're not going to be able to sign everybody at that point either. So, but hopefully at that point too, you'll probably have likely have like a rookie quarterback. So
that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, really good point. Yeah, those first. Who knows if it's going to be a first-round guy, second-round guy, but those first-round guys, not like a Brock Purdy contract where you're Mr. Irrelevant and you're getting paid under $1 million a year. Like these rookie quarterbacks still make some good money.
Yeah.
But that's a very, very good point.
Just to piggyback off that for a second, 2 things. I love that the news is coming out that the Niners were lowballing Devontae and that he's like, F that. Like, I'm not going to go do that. And then 2, I feel like the fact that we haven't heard anything about the Purdy situation, like this should have been like open and closed. And I feel like that there's a real world where they're exploring moving on from Brock Purdy.
The Niners like to get their deals done in August. Like they wait. Trent Williams, George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, like they wait. And I know that he just reported to camp, Brock Purdy, but George Kittle did not. So I'm pretty curious to see how that works. I think they're going to end up taking advantage of Purdy. He's such a nice guy. He's Mr. Irrelevant. So, you look at all those things and you try and figure out the best solution. But yeah, there's a real world where that could happen for sure.
Yeah. I also think they're going to take advantage of him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, they definitely could. And then this is another one of our, I guess this is our first 6th-round pick number 190. We got R.J. Mickens, a safety out of Clemson. So Quentin Lake and Cam Curl on the last year of their deals. So this is definitely something to keep your eyes on. If they don't re-sign Quentin Lake, if they don't re-sign Cam Curl, they're notorious for not re-signing safeties. But one of the things I liked about Mickens is that he lined up at free safety, nickel, and near the box. He's third on the team in tackles. He's the son of an 11-year veteran. He doesn't always match his athletic testing, but he excels with physical, precise angles, and I think that's so important from these type of players. Really strong tackler. He reads quarterbacks well. He's got a receiver background and was a team captain. So this could be one of those like Jordan Fuller type steals that you get late, and he becomes a really solid player for you at safety. And these are kind of like that range in which I look to get a safety. R.J. Mickens is my favorite on this board. But I also like Dan Jackson out of Georgia. I also like Sebastian Castro out of Iowa. So just keep your eyes on the position. I think Andrew Makuba from Texas, if you get him in the 3rd round, I wouldn't complain at all. I think he's probably going to be one of the better ones in the draft outside of like a Malachi Starks or a Nick Emamori. So keep your eyes on all that. In our next 6th-round picks, only 5 picks later, Ty Robinson, interior defense tackle from Nebraska. So he played multiple spots at Nebraska: nose tackle, 3 tech, 4-eye, outside of the tackle. So this is one of your like versatile front players. Maybe like a Greg Gaines, although Greg Gaines is more of a nose tackle. But like, somebody that's a little bit more versatile up front. They can play in multiple spots in rotation. Again, just more bulk, more depth on the defensive line. You can't tell me that this guy doesn't look like a Los Angeles Ram. He's got really good natural instincts, and he lacks some like star potential, but he has the ideal size toughness and competitiveness to play in the NFL. So I think he projects as a rotational defensive lineman, but can be a really good player.
I mean, anybody this late, pretty much too. It's very toss-up-y that they're on the team by the end of it. So I'm just happy that more interior defensive lineman. It's just always a good call.
Yeah, and this is kind of the range in which we'd be looking to for an interior defensive lineman. Ty Robinson, favorite on the list. I think Omar Norman Lott from Tennessee is a guy that a lot of people have their eyes on. Aeneas Peebles from Virginia Tech is one that we've mock drafted a few times, and one that I like. And then also Vernon Broughton from Texas in the 4th round, just another Texas guy that I feel like Les Snead would want to get his hands on. This one's a little bit crazy. Round 6, pick 201, Tyler Shuck. We talked about him already. We talked about the quarterback position already. I just think he's one of the more gifted throwers in the draft. He's already 26 years old, but he was tied for 4th in the FBS with 7 completions of 50-plus yards in 2024. And I think he handles pressure really well. On 142 times that he was pressured in 2024, he was only sacked on 9.9% of those plays. So somewhat impressive. I think you sit behind Matthew Stafford and then in 2 years and all of a sudden you got a 28-year-old starting quarterback. I just don't know how realistic it is that he's available in the 6th round.
I don't think. Yeah, the people want the quarterbacks early. It would be really cool to see him there. I would love that. It would mean that Stetson Bennett is likely just off the team entirely because they're not going to have 4 quarterbacks. They're not going to hold 4. And I bet he's kind of worried about that right now too, thinking like if they draft a quarterback, I'm kind of off this team. So I mean, bring in somebody that late. It's an obvious project. It's not somebody that you're like looking to pull in a situation like he would be behind Jimmy G on the depth chart. So it's there wouldn't be any worry of like, he's coming for Stafford's job?
Yeah. And you know what? I wouldn't mind if they got somebody like a Will Howard or even like a Dylan Gabriel. I know the Rams have a left-handed quarterback coach that actually played for the St. Louis Rams. And Dylan Gabriel's lefty out of Oregon. I also really like Kyle McCord, who was just on the Gruden quarterback camp. So, Nick, if you haven't watched that or any Rams fans haven't watched that, go watch that. It's pretty good.
I love those. Yeah, I'm a big fan of those.
Yeah, but I also love the Jalen Milroe idea. So let's try to have some fun with the quarterback position. Or if they decide not to and they want to wait till next year, that's fine with me. And then the final pick in round 6, pick 202, I drafted an avatar, Oronde Gadsden II, a tight end out of Syracuse. Tall, rangy athlete who added a lot of bulk in the past couple of years. Hand strength is really good. I think this is the steal of the entire draft, if I'm being honest with you. Like that, he's projected, I think, to go in the 3rd round or the 4th round. He fell all the way to the bottom of the 6th round. So another thing, explosives, responsible for 16 catches, 20-plus yards in 2024, which is the 4th most amongst FBS tight ends. He's a willing positional blocker. You could play him in line. He's got display and movement skills typical of a former wide receiver. His feet are really quick. Contested catches, I think he was second amongst FBS tight ends in 2024 with 17 contested catches. So this is a really good player that you got late in the 6th round that I would love to see the Rams be all over. And here's the tight end list, what you can expect. So yeah, there's Oronde. He's projected in the 4th round. Gunnar Helm is definitely going to be a guy that a lot of Rams fans have their eyes on because of the connection with Texas. I know they met with Matavo from UCLA. Elijah Aroro gets a lot of praise from Rams fans. And these top 3 guys, man, like Colston Loveland is going to be a lot of fun. Tyler Warren, I think, is going to go in the top 8. And Mason Taylor is the son of Jason Taylor, former defensive end who's now in the Hall of Fame. And he's the nephew of Zach Thomas, another Hall of Fame linebacker. Wow. So you got some good blood there with star power and family stuff. So
that's the one thing that I really feel like we've been missing in the McVay era. In the probably honestly in like the Rams like their entire existence outside of, like the greatest show on turf. It's just like an amazing tight end, just like a top tier tight end talent. And I don't know if the Avatar is that, but I would, I'm very happy to bring on somebody new to, kind of work under Tyler Higbee, because the guy that we got from Miami with the Jalen Ramsey trade was not it.
Yeah, and he's gone. He's with Jacksonville now.
Oh, good.
Hunter Long. So
Hunter
that's
Long,
what we got for you guys. The perfect mock is what we wanted to call it. So I mean, you get, I think the home run picks would be Trey Amos, Ozzie Trapillo, Kyle Williams, even like a Ty Robinson and an Oronde. I think those are all home run picks. So let us know your thoughts on what you guys think. If there's better prospects in these draft slots that you feel like we could have taken, please let us know. I know the draft is only a couple of days away, but I hope you guys gobble this up and enjoy it as much as possible heading into Thursday night at 8:30 Eastern.
Yeah, enjoy these tasty nugs before the post-draft coverage, because then you're kind of in it after that. I mean, you got playoff hockey and basketball, but I mean, football season like starts on Thursday in a way, so it's really exciting. I'm stoked. Where is the draft?
It's in Green Bay.
Ugh, that's horrible. The fact that it has to be there. That is such a small, crappy town. I can't believe that's even being hosted there. Yeah, let's fly in and then take another plane to get into Green Bay. Gosh.
Yeah, that is kind of harsh. Yeah, good point. But it's where dreams are made.
Right. So. Yeah. No, I know. It's a small town, and it's cool that we have cities like Jacksonville and Green Bay having their own football teams. It just feels like, really, it's like Portland doesn't get one, but Green Bay, whatever.
Oh, I love it. Well, we will talk to you guys again soon in a couple of days after the first round. We appreciate you guys as always. Drop your comments below, like and subscribe, please. And as always, go Rams.
Go Rams.